What seem like superficial coincidences in life are actually signs of the soul's hidden plan. Sometimes while walking down the street, browsing in a bookstore, or waiting at the train station, we meet someone, and this encounter seems to have no apparent meaning. However, according to Carl Jung, each of these moments is an event of synchronicity. The universe, in tune with the soul's inner vibration, creates a corresponding event in the external world. Therefore, when you cross paths with someone, you don't truly meet that person. You encounter an echo of your own unconscious. Jung described this as a meaningful coincidence. In other words, although an event may seem random, it is secretly connected to your inner state. The inexplicable closeness or discomfort you feel when meeting someone is an indication that your unconscious is trying to tell you something. Every person is consciously aware of only a limited area of their consciousness. Yet much of your personality lives in the shadow, in the unconscious. Therefore, when you meet someone, you must recognize not who they are, but which part of yourself they represent, because that person may be a vehicle for reaching your inner completeness. This is precisely why the sense of familiarity arises when you cross paths with someone. That person reminds you of something, perhaps an emotion, a wound, or perhaps a strength long silenced within you. Even if you see them for the first time, it's as if you've already met them 1,000 times. These deep psychological images that Carl Jung called archetypes are stored in humanity's collective memory. This is why some people seem familiar, because you carry echoes of the same symbols in your unconscious. That person embodies one of your inner archetypes in the external world. Perhaps it's the wise old man, the shadow, the soulmate, or the mother archetype. Each represents a theme in your inner world waiting to be resolved. One of Jung's clients realized that for years she had fallen in love with men with the same character, controlling, distant, and critical men. Jung told her, "Your unconscious projects your repressed need for independence. These men represent your inner power." This awareness transformed the woman's life because now she saw her encounters not as punishment, but as lessons. The unconscious is a person's deepest guide, but its language is symbolic. Dreams, coincidences, encounters all speak this language, but most people don't know how to listen. When an event happens, they label it as luck, destiny, or coincidence. Yet the psyche is always constructing a network of meanings. Loving someone, hating someone, trusting someone, or fearing someone. Each is a reflection of an inner part of you in the external world. Whatever is within you forms an external world you will attract. If you're recognizing these patterns in your own life, if you're beginning to see how your unconscious has been guiding your encounters and relationships, subscribe to Inner Wise Woman and hit that notification bell. Because we dive deep into Jung's psychology, specifically for women navigating their journey of self-discovery, shadow work, and authentic transformation. This is where ancient wisdom meets modern feminine consciousness. According to Jung, human relationships are a laboratory in which the soul observes, tests itself, and transforms. Every person who enters our life represents a part of our inner world, even if we're not aware of it. Some show us light, others darkness. Some teach us love, others how to establish boundaries. Therefore, relationships are never coincidences. They are mirrors created by the soul to reach its own completeness. The admiration we feel for someone is actually the reflection of a hidden but repressed aspect of ourselves. Anger, on the other hand, reveals a part of ourselves we cannot accept. Often we become angry with someone else, but what we're angry about is the aspect we don't want to see in ourselves. This dark region Jung calls the shadow is a force hidden in the unconscious that constantly influences us. Therefore, every person we meet makes this shadow visible by placing a mirror before us. When you love someone, the attraction you feel for that person is often a reflection of your potential. This is because the unconscious seeks to complete you by showing you externally what you lack. For example, you might admire someone who has embraced a lifestyle you don't dare embrace, or you're attracted to someone when you see the compassion you've repressed within yourself. Although this attraction may seem romantic on the surface, it's actually a spiritual calling. The other person is there to awaken a hidden quality within you. This is why the concept we call soulmate is a complementary archetype in Jung's language. That person doesn't complete you, they simply make you aware of what you perceive as missing in yourself. The intensity of emotions you feel with them is an indication that your inner balance is being restored. However, these same mirrors also bring pain because some people make visible the darkest areas of the subconscious. This situation makes people uncomfortable. They want to flee and even blame the other person. However, Jung said, in the external world you only perceive your own inner world. Therefore, someone who makes you angry might actually be triggering a repressed emotion within you. For example, those who cannot tolerate being controlled are often unaware of their own obsession with control. Or those who constantly feel judged are the people who judge themselves the most. One of the most powerful psychic mirrors is the enemy figure. When you hate someone and want to destroy them, what you actually want to destroy is an aspect within yourself. Jung describes this phenomenon as shadow projection. In other words, a person projects their inner darkness onto others and fights against them. However, when these projections are recognized and brought to consciousness, the hostility dissolves because the person realizes there is no longer another to fight, but an inner space to confront themselves. Therefore, in Jung's psychology, the greatest transformation happens through enemies. One of Jung's most surprising observations is that people live much of their life according to an unconscious script. We think we make choices, but often what guides our choices is a deep force we're not even aware of. This force feeds on emotional scars from childhood, repressed desires, unfinished experiences, and collective patterns inherited from our ancestors. Jung calls this unconscious manipulation. In other words, there's an invisible screenwriter behind life that carefully constructs the scenes necessary for the soul's growth. Life constantly sends similar events, presents the same type of people, and inflicts the same pain. The person asks, "Why always me?" but cannot find the answer. Yet every repetition is the unconscious's way of saying, "Look, you haven't understood this yet." One of Jung's clients repeatedly fell in love with people who abandoned her. Every time, a different face, a different story, but the same result, abandonment. When Jung examined this situation, he realized the woman had been emotionally neglected by her father during childhood. That child had grown up as a soul seeking love, but was always rejected. The unconscious would relive the same story over and over in adulthood to heal this wound. However, this cycle wouldn't end unless it was recognized. Jung's method was to help the woman see this unconscious scenario, because awareness replaces fate with free will. This is exactly what he called integration, confronting your unconscious and bringing it into the conscious sphere. Jung said, "Fate is what governs you as long as you remain unconscious of it. When you become conscious of it, fate transforms." This transformation is life's deepest meaning, because from that moment on, you are no longer a victim of events, but the author of your own story. However, this awareness requires courage because the unconscious contains not only beauty, but also fears, repressed anger, shame, and jealousy. Confronting these aspects means looking into your own darkness. Jung calls this meeting the shadow. Every person has within themselves a side they don't want to see. However, until they face that shadow, a person cannot be complete. There are moments in life when time stops, space cancels out, and logic loses its meaning. A glance, a word, an encounter, or a dream. In those moments, it's as if an invisible hand is taking you exactly where you need to be. Jung called these moments synchronicity. Those mysterious intersections where apparently unconnected events are linked by an inner web of meaning. A person appears at the right time, a book falls into your hands by chance and deeply affects you, or a phrase you haven't heard in years reaches you on the exact day you need it. All of these are reflections of the soul's profound relationship with time. According to Jung, the unconscious understands not only the past, but also the future. Therefore, certain events appear in advance as psychic signals to prepare for what's coming. Synchronicity is how the universe speaks to you. However, to understand this language, the mind must calm down. because meaning is not perceived in noise, but in silence. When you stop for a moment, you become aware of how life is speaking to you. These moments are sometimes small, sometimes shocking. Sometimes you meet someone and they seem familiar, but you can't remember where you met them. Their voice, their gaze, their very presence seems to come from somewhere. Perhaps you can love someone even before meeting them because your soul already knows them. These moments of intersection often accompany crises because the unconscious speaks to you when you're most struggling. In that moment, a coincidence, a symbol, a dream appears, not to weaken you, but to call you to awareness. According to Jung, soul crises are opportunities to connect with the conscious mind because the unconscious only emerges in moments of rupture. Therefore, every crisis is a door. When you pass through that door, you're no longer the same person. According to Jung, life's flow is not a random confluence of events. It unfolds with an invisible order, a silent but impeccable harmony. Everything is planned for the completion of a person's inner evolution. This script is not written by the conscious mind, but by the unconscious, because the conscious mind sees only the present. But the unconscious simultaneously grasps the past, future, and potential. The soul connects a person to specific people, events, and emotions to foster their development. Sometimes these encounters are painful. Sometimes they bring peace, but each is necessary for the soul to complete its wholeness. Therefore, nothing you experience is in vain. Every pain, every loss, every encounter triggers a transformation in your inner world. Understanding the soul's script is equivalent to unveiling the meaning of life, because only when a person becomes aware of their story can they collaborate with it. Jung calls this process individuation, recognizing yourself not as part of a crowd, but as a being aware of your unique consciousness. However, the path to individuation is not easy. Along this path, a person encounters both their conscious aspects and their repressed shadows. Every encounter is designed to reconcile these two poles. The soul's goal is not to suppress one side, but to integrate both. Because true wisdom is born not from denying contradictions, but from understanding them. Recurring scenes are striking in the soul's script. An event, an emotion, or a form of relationship may reappear repeatedly in life. The soul repeats the unlearned lesson. This is why we attract the same type of people in our lives, live through the same arguments, and repeat the same emotional breakdowns, because that part of the script has not yet been completed. When awareness arrives, the cycle ends. Therefore, every repetition is an opportunity for awareness. The soul's goal is not perfection, but completion, because perfection is an illusion. The soul matures through mistakes, falls, and losses. As Jung says, you cannot reach the light without passing through darkness. Therefore, in the soul's script, mistakes, failures, and ruptures are the most precious scenes in the story, because a person deepens only when they feel pain. The deepest insight central to all Jung's teachings is this: true transformation doesn't happen with noise, but with silence. There are no explosions or accidental miracles in the soul's evolution. There is only the silent, constant flow of awareness. Often we think transformation comes with major events, a loss, a separation, a moment of awakening. However, according to Jung, transformation begins after these events, not within them, because the true change is not the event itself, but the recognition of its meaning. The unconscious constantly sends signals, but to listen to them, there must be silence in the heart. There are periods in life when it seems nothing is happening. Your plans get disrupted, you distance yourself from others, and sometimes you don't even feel anything. Yet this emptiness is when the soul is at its peak activity. Jung calls this creative stillness, just as the earth freezes in winter, but internally prepares for spring. So the human soul restructures itself in silence. The silent law of transformation begins with acceptance. You stop seeking external blame because you understand that every event is the reflection of an inner balance. Jung said, "Light is born where darkness is recognized." In other words, transformation is possible not through self-denial, but by accepting all aspects of yourself. When a person recognizes both their light and darkness, they no longer become a fragmented self, but a whole being. The silence of transformation is also solitude, because as awareness rises, you distance yourself from the crowd. Jung describes this state as the solitude of consciousness. This solitude is not punishment, but purification. When the soul distances itself from the crowd's noise, it begins to listen to its own essence again. Over time, you realize that true power lies in understanding, not in reacting. The soul's law doesn't operate through war, but through awareness. When you begin to understand someone instead of opposing them, the energy changes. This peace is a state of awareness where nothing is lacking, nothing is too much. In that moment, you feel deeply that life is working in your favor. As Carl Jung said, the soul grows in silence, and perhaps true wisdom simply lies in noticing this silence. When you become aware of your silent transformation, you begin to make peace with your past, because you understand that everything happened to bring you here and now. Conscious of this story, embarking on a new phase.